Welcome to One Shots Tavern, or should I say, welcome to Downtime, the show where we are going to be talking about the Eye of the Tyrant or any future actual play that we will be doing. Today, I am going to be joined by Corb. Corb is a professional improv artist and, of course, plays Omega Crash, or as everyone knows him, Egg. Okay.
And out, and then, try projecting and say, these are
Hello?
my cucumber sandwiches.
These are my cucumber sandwiches.
Yes, but even more. Come on, let it out. These are
These
my
are my
cucumber sandwiches. And really move your mouth as much as possible when you say it.
These are my cucumber sandwiches. All right.
There you go.
All right. Yeah. Especially since nobody's watching this on video. I'll probably leave some of that in. But welcome, everyone, to episode 1 of Downtime, a show where we sit down with the cast members of our actual play, The Eye of the Tyrant, and talk about life, characters, inspiration, and whatever else we like. Today, I'm joined by Omega Crash, a.k.a. Egg, but in real life, known as Corb. Hello.
Or Solid KP or whatever.
Hello. Or Solid KP. So, Corb, Egg has received a lot of attention from the people who have been watching The Eye of the Tyrant or listening to The Eye of the Tyrant.
Right.
He's become a pretty quick favorite among the cast of felons that we have on board. Let's talk about his mindset because without getting into too many spoilers, Egg is a very friendly guy. Doesn't seem quite to fit in with a lot of the common rabble among the Eye of the Tyrant. But he also seems to be a pretty open, bleeding heart type. So, what are your inspirations when it comes to Egg?
Well, my background is in improvisational theater. I've been doing it for about 15 years. And I like to play characters that yes and by default. I was playing a one-shot with a friend a couple years ago. And I decided to just play this bard who was a dunderhead, but just complimented anybody, no matter what they did, whether they succeeded or failed, on how well they did it. And I just noticed it made all the other players very happy to be there and excited to do whatever. So I just wanted to do a character that does that. I think according to the cipher system, and I think this is an awesome part about the cipher system, I made him ahead of time be an impulsive brick who helps his friends. Exactly what I want to live up to. I know I told you when we were making the character, I wanted to be like Kronk, like a himbo. But when we got closer to the date of actual recording, I was binge watching a lot of Seinfeld, and there's in the later seasons, there's a character that appears, Elaine's boss, who is literally, he's also a real person named Jay Peterson, but the guy who plays him in Seinfeld is like a former soap opera actor, and he's supposed to be this intelligent character. He speaks with a modicum of verbosity. Ever he talks, but he's like a completely ignorant to things that are actually going on in life. And I was like, that's my guy. I want to speak with the drama of a soap opera actor, but have no idea what's going on.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's been one of my favorite parts about Egg is Egg genuinely seems to support the party, right? And support the ideas that the party throws out, even if he doesn't understand them, even if he doesn't necessarily grasp the gravitas of the situation all the time. All of the players are properly kind of supported, and the little friendship with Seer and their little repertoire is fairly interesting to watch. Because you have essentially two complete opposites of characters. One is a beautiful idiot himbo. One is a small and angry little guy. who seems to confide in Egg, even if he doesn't necessarily want to tell Egg everything. So you said you are an improv guy. You do improv professionally. You go to improv clubs and stuff. How did you get into that in the first place?
Improv clubs. It sounds like we're all standing around smoking cigars, being like, "We got to take out Smalls." Yes, and we got to take out Tony.
Yep.
I started. I'm from Calgary, Alberta, where the Loose Moose Theater was founded by Keith Johnstone, who you probably do not know, and people listening don't know, but I swear he's a big name in improv. He invented stuff like theater sports and kind of popularized short form improv.
There's one person who's listening that just goes, "Oh man, I know that guy."
Keith Johnstone, I love theater sports and improv. And I went to this theater, as a youth. I was taught by Andrew Fung, who was a big name in Canada now, but at the time he was just a guy teaching us improv. And he taught us all the basics. And I was like, at first I was really bad, and then I continued to be really bad, and somehow miraculously my team won like the theater sports tournament that was like region Y, which was a big boost. And then I continued to be really bad, and then I moved to a different city, and I continued to be really bad at improv. I guess I just cut my teeth a lot for about the first 5 years of doing it before something started to click. It's just practicing and learning the skills, and now I teach workshops. In fact, here's a great promo opportunity for me. I'm teaching characterization role play improv workshops, probably starting right when this podcast comes out, on Wednesday evenings and Sunday mornings for the rest of April. So if you're listening and you want to get in on that, I guess you can go to DJ's Discord, because they'll definitely put it in the self-promotion channel.
Absolutely. The One Shots Tavern Discord, oneshots.tavern.com. But also, I will
double self-promotion. Whoa.
Double self-promotion. I'll also have Corb's links in the description of this episode. So if you go, man, I would love to learn how to improv, 100%. Everyone I have talked to, which has been quite a few people in the Game Master for Hire community, that have taken any of Corb's workshops, have all highly recommended them. I haven't done them yet myself. I really should, and I probably will at some point once I have a little bit more time, because improv is something I've always been interested in. Me and my wife actually talk about it a lot, where she sees, for example, Dropout. It's basically a company full of people who got their start in improv. And of course, like web funnies. And every time we're watching something like Make Some Noise or any of those various other shows, my wife is always like, "This is giving me so much anxiety. I could never do this." And I was like, you could.
That's what makes it possible. Even when we're doing role play or whatever, but when you're on stage, it's the empathy from the audience for what you're doing. It's being put in these ridiculous situations where you have to do a 5-10 minute scene where you can only say 3 words at a time. But that's what makes it fun, is overcoming those limitations. That's the principles we apply to role play too.
Oh, absolutely. More along those lines. Like, I took theatering in high school. That was my experience with acting. Did some shows, whatever. But in my theater class, we had a day where it was just dedicated to stand-up comedy. And I had never in my life even thought of something. And it was supposed to be impromptu stand-up comedy. And so I got up there and I just started, they gave us a theme. I don't remember what my theme was, but it was definitely, I do remember what our theme was. It was Fairy Tale Land, like horror. And so I did this stupid stand-up bit about being a guy who couldn't hear or see or some stupid thing. and yelling at the audience, and they're laughing. Most uncomfortable I've ever been in my entire life. It was fun. I've never attempted it again. But
it's hard to be on stage alone.
Yeah.
In fact, that's the hardest thing to do.
Oh, yeah.
I've taught a lot of workshops to a lot of different people, role players and GMs, other improvisers, theater dorks, general like work teams, whatever. But the hardest demographic I've ever dedicated a couple weeks of improv workshops to teach was stand-up comedians. Harder than the general population because stand-up comedians need to be in control the whole time. And that's something that is counter to the concepts of improvising. But there are bucket shows, as they're called, where comedians have to come up and just look at a prompt and then improvise a set. Those are very hard for comedians and improvisers because it forces you to be vulnerable on stage.
Right. And talking about something that maybe you don't have any idea about, and just making up those details.
Well, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. But learning that doesn't matter and then internalizing that doesn't matter, that's the skill that you have to practice for years. That's the hard part.
Sure. Yeah. And, the interesting thing is, you as you mentioned, stand-up comedy is all about being in control. Whereas you look at improv and it's all about working kind of together and not having control of the situation. So tell me what that's like.
Well, that's what I mean. That's basically what it is. The basic, there's a lot of different schools of improv, and most people think of improv comedy when they think of improv. But I was taught storytelling improv, which obviously complements role play very well. And does end up causing a lot of laughter, but just as a natural consequence of the situational comedy and the fact that people are struggling and being spontaneous. But that what we're taught in storytelling and probably in general improv is it's not about you. The three rules you have to follow are listening and not just hearing and internalizing, but showing the other person you're listening. Basically, platonic flirting, looking them in the eyes and smiling and. Right. Everything is enthusiastically accepted. Yes-anding, obviously, that one should not require much explanation. And the third one, probably the most important, is inspiring your partner or making your partner look good. So the idea is you don't care about how you're doing, what you're saying. You offload all of that self-doubt onto your partner because they see you objectively.
Right.
And they can offload all of what they have onto you. And when you have that relationship of trust, you can just, improvise because you don't have to be scared about whatever you're going to say.
That makes sense.
And once you have that figured out and mastered, what that's like is it's very fun. You're playing. You're literally, that's the definition of playing pretend. You're not caring about what you're doing. You're just giving somebody and having it bounce off. You're having fun. And when it's in front of an audience, it's validated, but either way, it's just fun to do.
Oh, for sure. And so if you're providing your role appropriately, right, then you kind of are relying on your partner to provide their role appropriately. And so by supporting them and them supporting you, you're just kind of lifting each other up in this scene. That's awesome.
Yeah. But the trick is that no matter what the role they choose is, it's a super good idea to you and vice versa.
Right.
Because you're being spontaneous. You don't know what role you're supposed to play until it happens. But whatever it is, it's the best idea ever.
Honestly, that just sounds like good marriage advice in general, right? Not even just...
It's good relationship. That is Rebecca Northen, who's another improviser from the Loose Moose. She did this show around Canada, possibly the US, for years. I think she's been doing it for a decade now, called Blind Date. It's just her on stage and full houses of audiences show up. She calls down one person from the audience. They don't know who it is. And they do an hour and a half, I believe, show where it's just a blind date with her and this random audience member.
That's awesome.
She did a TED Talk about doing this show and talking about the principles I just talked about, listening and making your partner look good. And she starts crying during this TED Talk because She says she realizes that this is what people do when they're in love.
Yeah.
That's what I meant by platonic flirting earlier.
Right.
So yeah, it's good life advice too. And good role play, obviously, advice. And if you want to know more, you can join my workshops.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's scoot back over to tabletop and start to marry these topics together.
Good idea.
First, how did you get started in TTRPGs like Dungeons and Dragons and such? What was your introduction?
Online forum role playing.
It always
I think
is. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's, you play video games a lot as a child and role playing games. But, what I enjoyed those JRPGs and stuff. But my introduction to me role playing was doing those, no rules. We're just writing like multiple paragraphs as this angsty person at 13 years old. In this online like BBB
place
forum.
That I should not be.
And then I graduated. I started writing for the SCP Foundation, which you may or may not be familiar with. But I joined them when they were relatively young, and they had like an IRC that I joined, and then I ended up running one of their biggest role play channels. So that was when I got used to GMing and like running these IRC multiple people fudge rolled games. And then from there, I didn't even role play in person until university.
Yeah.
And I got into pro GMing like 3.5 years ago. December of 2020 was when I put up my first pro game.
Makes sense. Seems like when a lot of people decided to start getting into it.
Those were the easy years, yes.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the weird online role-playing forums because I did the exact same thing, the same age. I don't know how old you are. I just realized that. I'm 32.
29, so
29.
That late millennial coming of age.
Yep, exactly. And, for us, the internet was an absolute Wild West, like, very strange place growing up. And I had on my little Boost mobile phone, there were all of these different like forums that you could participate in for free as a Boost customer. And that's what I was doing. And for me, I was a very edgy emo, hardcore kid, that journey. And then I was in these like vampire role play forums where we're just a bunch of vampires. And we're hanging out and we're brooding and we're talking and like there's cross conversations going on, but you're just looking for the usernames that you're currently in a conversation with. And that really did spark a love of roleplay for me. And this was long before I ever attempted to get into Dungeons and Dragons or anything like that. And then a few years later, I guess not long before, because it's only a few years later, I play 3.5 for the first time with friends and continue on, What was it like? This is going to be a thing that you're going to have to think about, but what was it like that first time hopping into, what was your first role-playing game, for example, for TTRPGs?
So my first one was, it was a couple college friends. I think I was 18. We played Pathfinder first edition.
Yep.
I didn't know what I was doing, but it was that was kind of the fun spirit of it. Was we were just guys who were just goofing around, and we didn't know what was proper or the etiquette or anything. And we just had a fun time. I played a halfling named Fidgety Hamscrump. And he was just this little chaos rogue, the kind that would drive me crazy if I was a GM now and had them in my game.
Right, of course.
But and we had a great time, and then the GM brought in his girlfriend, who I can objectively say was a bad person because she ended up cheating on him later on in their relationship. At the time, we just didn't like her, and that kind of slowly, rent the game apart. And we stopped. And I do remember there was one episode where like the GM said, we're going to do a Coliseum match now, and I'm going to pit you against each other because we're halfway through the chapters, and you're just in a Coliseum match. And I got pitted against this guy's girlfriend, who I hated, and I hated her character. I was just fidgety hamscrum, but she was a paladin in first edition Pathfinder, so with her armor class, I literally couldn't hit her unless I crit.
Yeah.
So I turned to the GM and was like, what's the environment like here? Is it dusty? And he was like, yes. And I was like, can I do a check to make it dusty and obscure myself? He was like, sure. And then the next 2 hours were me spending one turn making it dusty so that she couldn't see me with her perception, because it was terrible because she was a paladin.
Yeah.
And the next turn trying to hit her. And then that was the last session we ever had, because it didn't end, and we both quit.
It's what's really funny is how similar our first little thing was, but on opposite sides. For example, I played a paladin. It was an elven paladin named Ariat Mithril Blood, because your first time playing in a game and you're playing an elf, well, of course you're gonna hop into the elven Tolkien language thing and try to get like as much I want a very elven name. And I was a paladin, and it was my first time, and I was taking things very seriously. I was very much like, my alignment is lawful good, right? And my friend Will, friend of the show, if you've watched some of our actual play demonstrations of certain games, you've seen Will. He's in the zone that we just... Oh, there goes my fidget toy. He's in the zone episode that we released at this point last week. But he was playing a true neutral kind of roguish halfling. And he was doing things in front of me as this lawful good paladin who, I don't even remember who my deity was for that. And I was just like, I would not be okay with that. It's funny how serious your first campaign you take, or like your first few campaigns even, where you're like, okay, well, these are the rules that have been given to me. And especially if you're like me, where I'm autism, ADHD, so like for me, I look at that, or at least I used to very much look at that and go, these are my guidelines. This is how I have to play my character. And so it was funny because like there was a few sessions where we just had to stop because like Will and I would start arguing. And when I say Will and I would start arguing, I mean I would start arguing. And Will would just very much be justified in whatever he was doing as his character, right? And it was all harmless. But I find that really funny. I started with 3.5, then moved into Pathfinder.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a lot of people's journey, because,
From crunch to crunch.
Crunch to crunch, exactly. 4E apparently wasn't crunchy enough for people. And nowadays people are looking at it and they're going, oh, maybe that wasn't so bad. But, you live and learn. All right, cool. So your first, time playing Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder, you're this halfling, you're chaotic, you do things for you, you're fighting against your paladin friend. Very relatable.
I did things to make my friends laugh. That was my character. I don't think anything has changed, actually.
Well, that's good.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously, I guess the tabletop games came before the improv stuff, or was that around about the same time?
No, after, or around the same time. Well, my first tabletop was after I had already done a couple years of improv. But I was always fixated on being some sort of comedy guru, and now I did stand up for about 7 years, and I don't do it anymore because I didn't like it as much. But improv is still my numero uno.
Yeah, no. Cool. All right. So let's pivot one more time here. What is going through Egg's mind as he lays aboard the Eye of the Tyrant, sitting there in his bunk with his bunkmate Seer each night. Like, what is the core of Egg's anxieties at the moment?
This is the question I was worried about, because I'm a very reactive player. I don't tend to think too deeply about my characters until I have to respond to something. I when I make my characters, I just give them like an objective, maybe something they care about, and that's it. What was he thinking lying next to Siri? He was thinking, where are my brothers? Why aren't they coming to rescue me?
Yep.
You know what? What's going on? They're gonna come, or rather, they're gonna come. I know it. They're gonna come. They're gonna come. They're gonna come rescue me. Crash Clan for life. They're gonna come rescue me.
Right. Yeah, it's that very loyal family structure. The this is my identity. Right, this is everything, and it is like with Egg, I see a lot of like, these are my values, right? And sure, a lot of the times, like, the values of our characters are really just our values, right? The things that we care about deeply.
I'm not Egg.
You're not Egg.
I care about my friends. I mean, I care about my friends, I swear, but he's definitely not. Maybe a reflection of myself. In the way all things are.
Yeah, well, you say that, but maybe. I don't know.
Well, what I'll say is, when you improvise or you play any character, and you want to play one that people, apparently with Egg, people like and care about and want to hear more of, it requires that you be vulnerable and show a piece of yourself. So I'm sure I'm doing that with Egg, but I haven't thought about what that is.
No, that's fair.
Maybe I am just a big dunderhead.
No, not
deep
that
down
part.
Inside.
It's more of the core of your character, right? And
yes,
I do this a lot. A lot of my characters end up being idealists. I've always been an idealist. It's I'm the type of person who looks at the world and goes, man, and this could work better. This could work better. And really mad about capitalism, but also at the same time, like, I just want to get by. And so many of my characters reflect that. And so by nature, a lot of them end up being rogues or warlocks who are,
That's the other element of Egg that comes through from me is that, I made him a literal revolutionary, but not one who knows what's going on. And I read, well, you can't see it in this podcast, but you can see it when we do the show. I have a bunch of books behind me, ethnographies, Graeber books, whatever. I'm a vegan anarchist, whatever. And I thought it would be fun to play a character that has internalized all these ideas, but has no idea what they mean or what to do about them, and is just following them blindly.
I think something that's interesting is starting out with as this character who has no idea, right? Who knows the concepts, doesn't grasp them, follows them, I won't say blindly, but kind of, right? There's this chance for growth with Egg that he's seeing some of the worst parts of the galaxy right now. He's starting out, first of all, in a prison full of other revolutionaries, but some people there are not revolutionaries. Some people are just protesters. Some people are there by mistake, or they think they're there by mistake, or maybe they're not so guilty. And
not so bad at all.
And so like all of a sudden, as this campaign goes on, I'm interested to see where Egg goes with this.
Well, I think it's an obvious character arc, right? He realizes that, even if these ideals may have some validity to them. They're obviously just being used to control the other members of his family. Or maybe he doesn't realize that. Who knows? We're improvising.
Right.
But that seems the most obvious thing for now. I'm just playing him to his truth, and we'll see what he comes to understand as time goes on. What I want is at some point, him to have like some other member of the party, probably Seer, be like, listen to me. You got a bloobity-boo, and you can't keep listening to. You're gonna slap it in the face,
right?
In a very real way.
Yeah,
that's the fun stuff. That's the good stuff. A little catharsis,
for sure.
But I don't think we've built up to that yet. I think he needs more time to find his own way to establish a little platform, as we call it, about his own ideals. Maybe find something he cares about that then makes it so that these other things that he was instilled to care about matter less, or are in opposition to this new thing he cares about.
Right. I mean, it comes down to like a lot of the times found family versus birth family too, right? The nature and nurture and all of that. Like currently Egg is traveling with 4 completely different people that don't necessarily reflect the Crash family clan, right? You have Seer, who is this angry Templar, who just wants to see order and, his beliefs fulfilled. You've got Samuel, who is not a stranger to revolution or revolutionary ideas, and does work with some of these, different factions that are probably much more serious and maybe even scarier, right, than the Crash clan. And then, of course, you have Vesper, who is currently not sure what to do, because, as far as she knows and as far as she, has been told, there's really no reason for her to be in this precarious situation in the first place. But such is living underneath a system that is not necessarily looking out for the people, but rather looking out for the system itself. Which I think is something that we can all relate in, whether you live in Canada or the US or anywhere in the world. Often the system is not looking out for you. It just wants to make sure that it is working. And so there's that modicum of sacrifice of the people in order to grease the wheels and cogs to keep things going. And I know this isn't a political podcast. If I had an editor, I'd have them throw like some, crazy, anthem behind me. But a lot of this stuff is going to, be presented in my writing, right? That's what I know. That's what I think about the most. And so for me, like that's where I see a lot of these things. Now, speaking of my writing, working with you and Braden has significantly altered the way that I run tabletop games in general.
Great.
Not just the Eye of the Tyrant, but it has started to bleed over into my 5 paid games a week that I'm currently running. Where if I'm running a module, which often I'm running some sort of module that's mostly homebrew stuff, I read through cursory, I take them to the places they're supposed to go, but I have stopped preparing what I used to prepare.
Good.
Because it's kind of made me realize that, like, I don't want to dictate the entire story to my players. And I noticed this when I started playing in other people's games as of late. And they are all very good game masters and dungeon masters. They very much run things like I was used to having games run for me, which is, here's the rail, with a little bit of leeway left or right, and I'm just like, man, I kind of want to go peek behind the curtain and, see what's behind the facade of the set. I want to walk it. I want to go over here.
There's nothing but some peanuts and shoestrings.
Yeah. And so,
the curtain.
yeah,
that's the
absolutely.
secret.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And so now the way I've been structuring things is like, okay, cool. I'm not the best at coming up with names on the spot, so I've got a deck of cards that helps me with that. But like, apart from that, like, my players, including you guys, can run into anything. And I think that's kind of an interesting way to go about it. Basically having the world as an option instead of, the prepared 2 city blocks that they're going to be walking down.
Yeah, I'm glad, because I think I was noticing that when we were starting, and it seems like you're loosening up. And maybe the next evolution in that is to stop thinking about what you're doing as writing and to start thinking about it as improvising, dare I say, or at least collaborating, or just, role playing. Here's some more improv workshop stuff, I guess. I teach a lot of improv workshops to GMs, and I talk about like the different fears GMs have. These are outlined by Keith Johnstone when we improvise as well. But I tack on one extra specifically for game masters, which is the fear of losing control. Also applies to stand-up comedians, I guess.
Right.
And I think we GMs, especially when you start, especially professionally, you hold yourself to this super high standard of like, Matt Mercer or whatever. Even though Matt Mercer is also, he has a professional team and professional set makers, and he's also improvising a lot of the time.
For sure.
And you're like, I got to make sure that everything, goes the best for my players. But the reason people play role-playing games and not, video games is because of that flexibility, because of that social aspect, because we're all playing together and collaborating to make one story by just bouncing off each other. And the more you're okay with that, I think the more fun the players have. This is my mantra whenever I'm GMing and I'm preparing in particular, but even partway through the session when I'm just sitting back and letting the players talk is don't plan past the first offer. Don't just have one thing that you've put all of your heart and soul into, because you know that that's the one thing the players will be inspired by. And if they don't, whatever, that's fine. You can just improvise.
Yeah.
But whatever you give them, you just give it to them, and then you stop and you listen, and then you can just evolve from there. You don't need anything else.
Right.
So I'm glad you're learning that.
I'm learning.
And those listening, learn that too. It's like the most important thing when it comes to role play. It also applies to players. Don't plan past the first offer. Don't think about too far what you want your character to do. Think about what you're going to do this session the next time you speak, and then what they care about, not what you care about.
Right.
And you'll always be able to role play splendiferously. I guarantee it.
Absolutely. And it's been kind of nice, I now prep lore and not plot. I mean, like some of the plots, right? But like it's more of like, here's a bullet point of a thing that could happen. It might not. And therefore, like, I don't worry too much about it. Like, I'll introduce some things. But if you guys decide you want to go on a spa day, like, who am I to get in the way of players having fun and telling the story they want to tell, as opposed to like the story that like I intend to tell. And I love it. So hopefully, like I said, I need to take I need to take all of your improv classes, and get a little bit more practice in on it. But so far, it's been great.
To be honest, everything I've mentioned over the course of this was like all of the information. Everything else in my workshops is just practice. So you're already
to be fair,
you're already there. Look at that. Boom.
I need lots of practice, and sometimes that practice needs to come with some supervision. Be like, hey, improv better. Oh, yes, sir. So for
There's a few different ways to teach. That's one of them. I actually, sometimes I was at a workshop last week, just when I was like attending or supervising, I guess. I don't know, but I was just there. And the one teaching was like directing the people on stage. They would be like, come on, and be like, hey, my name's Frank. And she'd be like, no, we're starting again. Start more positive. And I was like, damn, that's good. I want to do and see more of that. Like, let's just cut it off right at the head and then just keep trying till we get it right.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that, like passion, right? Passion is the fuel that is going to make a good story. Not necessarily the skill in writing it, but just like that burning, I need this, like, let's just throw everything into it. And I feel like that's a lot of what improv and TTRPGs and acting in general is. It's the love of the thing that you're doing and the collaboration that you are working together on, and it's perfect.
And being okay with failing, even if whether being okay with failing and just throwing whatever at the wall.
Yeah.
And understanding that, even if that wasn't the best thing, you can just move on, or you can just try again, or whatever.
Yep. So I heard someone once say that failure is the springboard to success, where you're just using it to jump off to the next thing.
I prefer limitation as the birthplace of creativity. Copyright, Sally KP. Actually, I learned that I learned that in a playwriting class, but I've never been able to find the source for that quote. I don't know if my professor just pulled that out of his butt, but now that's like my thing.
Yeah. It's possible. I had a professor once definitely like write something down on the board, and he's like, this is the quote, and then he wrote his name at the end of it, and everybody was just kind of like, really? Yeah, what? But it was a good quote, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, absolutely. Well, Corb, is there anything else you want to cover as far as tabletop games, your background, things that you'd like to bring attention to?
Do we need to talk more about the game so we entice people to watch it, or is that what we already accomplished?
I think we accomplished quite a bit of that, right? Because we're introducing.
Hold on, let me do some enticing.
Yeah.
Hold on. Come watch Eye of the Tyrant every Wednesday. It'll be the most sensory, beautiful, imaginative experience you will ever have. I'm trying to ASMR them. Is that working?
Wait. I think you got to get really close into the microphone, and you got to say every Wednesday. Okay. Every Wednesday. There it is. Yep.
Eye of the Tyrant. Come watch, feel, become. This is what it's like to chew 5 gum.
Absolutely. That is it right there. And for those of you who are wondering, like, hey, wait a second, today's Wednesday. Where's my episode? Well, about that, we are going to be switching to using Descript for our actual play episodes. You don't really know much about the behind the scenes stuff and the programs, and that's okay. You don't have to. What you do need to know is if you listen to our normal Monday podcast and you hear that quality, especially say the Devin interview or the Zone, you can hear the crispness of the voices, and it's just it's an all around better experience. We have been kind of playing around with that, and we wanted to make sure that I could get the quality out of the actual play using Descript in order to kind of use that. And of course, me being somebody who not amazing when it comes to learning new skills sometimes, as far as like the technological skills, I needed to make sure that I was going to be capable to do this. And to be able to edit the episode myself. So essentially the eclipse day happened. Internet was a little weird all day, and I just decided, you know what? Let's wait. We're going to record our next episode via Descript, and it's going to sound and look beautiful. So that way you guys can get more out of it, and I can share more clips with you that are in a much nicer format than here is a screenshot of the podcast. Because I really do love this story that we're telling, and I am at the point where I'm like, you know what? At first this was just, I want to tell a story, and now it's, man, I really want to tell this story as well as we possibly can. So instead of us taking the last week of the month off, we are instead going to be taking this week, as you're listening, off, and then next week we're going to have an episode, and then we'll resume our normal schedule going forward from there. Corb, thanks for joining me.
Of course.
I'm very excited. We have character art coming, and that's going to be great because the artist is absolutely amazing. They're called Cactus Art, and we'll be sharing their stuff soon. So yeah, stick around.
It'll be prickly.
If you like what we're doing, every Wednesday we have the Eye of the Tyrant premiering, and Patreon. Check out the Patreon, check out the merch store. Eventually I am planning for us to have Eye of the Tyrant merch as well, just because that seems great to have a Fantasy Prisons merchandise.
Merch up.
Merch
out. Get on that merch.
Merch
is the birthplace of creativity. Boom.
But not only that, check out Corb's links down below in the description. Take an improv class, take a game or play a game with Corb. It's for a lot of us, the game mastering for hire and the workshops are most, if not all, of our income.
It's all of my income.
It is all of his income, and it's also all
and
of
the rent
my income. Help us eat. Help me buy a house. Anyways, see you guys next time here for Downtime and the Eye of the Tyrant.